Good morning. We are in Siman Reish Aleph Sif Chavches. Okay. Ein Shinuy Mareh Poisel Ela b'Meikashamim. Shinuy Mareh only passes by rainwater. Shanasu mikvah. That became a mikvah. Aval Mayan Eino Nisal b'Shinuy Mareh. A Mayan does not become possible with Shinuy Mareh. V'od Ela Filu HaMikvah Shenifsal. Even a mikvah, which becomes possible in himshich elav meimayan, if he attached it to a mayan mataro, so if you lechozul mareim, even if it's still dark purple or I don't know what, it doesn't make a difference. It's a mayan, does not become possible through Shinuy Mareh. Chavtes nafulo shlosha lugin yayin. If 3 lugin of yayin fell into the bore, to the mikvah. Ki'ilu lo nafal, we machshav it as if nothing happened. Like ki'ilu, we say that ki'ilu didn't happen. And mutar litvol, and you could be toivel beim makom hayayin, whether it's in the makom hayayin, beim makom hamayim. That doesn't make a difference. It's not going to passel anything. Again, this is we're talking about it where it didn't, where it didn't. Change the whole color. It's just gimel. It was just by gimelugim. I guess I'm not. I assume that it's. I assume we're talking about that it's chaser, and then gimelugim fell in, and then you were mashlim. Then it doesn't passel it, but it doesn't. But it doesn't. Not mashlim either, right? I guess when you're mashlim, you could be toivel in it, or if it's a bar mitzvah, either way, it doesn't. That Shinuy Mareh, it can be the point. I think the chiddush here, yeah, right. The chiddush is going to be, you'll see in a second. Hayashov, however, if it was shov in shikoi, and you did hashaka, they had connected to a mikvah with shefer sanod with whatever. He shik b'makom hayayin zeh. So. Over there, where it fell in, and there's yayin, doesn't make a difference. If it doesn't pass the mikvah, you can be toivel in that yayin. However, if you went ahead and want to do hashaka, by the whole of the hashaka, that's where the yayin is.
So the is where the mikvah is shalom.
It's shalom, yeah. But the chiddush over here is that if it's by the whole of the hashaka. Zev lo tihir. It's not going to retire because in that case we say that it's being meshik to the to the wine, and therefore it's not and it's ma'akev. It's blocking the water from connecting. Hishik b'makom hamayim. If they did hashaka b'makom hamayim, makom hamayim tiher, the part of the water where the water part of the mikvah is tahor, makom hayayin lo tiher. However, it's still not mataher the makom of the yayin. Haga mikvah chasar shenafel sham yayin. If you have a chasar mikvah and wine falls in, nishtane mareha, and it changed colors. V'nafel sham gimelugim mayim shuvim, and then 3 lugim and mayim shuvim fell in. Einam paislim. Oh, so now here's a maila, is that in that case, one at the time when there's a Shinuy Mareh, so it's not considered water anymore. So therefore, even if you have, let's say you had 39 saw and a bunch of wine fell in, and now it's all purple, and then 3 and gimelugim mayim went in, it doesn't passel it. Then, if when you go ahead and be mashlim it, and it's not purple anymore, it's kosher. This is interesting. It's an interesting din. We'll see also, there are other, so I get, I don't think right. Yeah, so I don't know. In a case, I don't know if it would. No, once it becomes puzzle, It wouldn't work. Okay, yeah. So this is the chiddush over here: is that a mikvah that wine fell in and is a Shinuy Mareh is not, it's not considered mei mikvah anymore. Lamed ein she'iva poselas ela b'mayim. Mayim she'uvim is only possible with its water. Ava hasheleg, snow shemiech chalolo, compacted snow, v'habarad, and or hail and hail, vakfor, and sleet, ice, things like that. V'hamelach, salt, v'hatit, shehu av ktsas. You have like thick, thick mud, a little bit thick. Afil yesh barachos, sheyicholin lahariko miklil. Okay, even if it's not like super thick, but it's liquid enough that you can pour it from one kli to another. Called in Shas tit hanirok. Ein she'iva poselas behem. That she'iva doesn't make a difference. She'im sha'av me'elu lemikva hachaser lo pasluhu. And if you would go ahead and you do she'iva with this, with mud, and you poured gimel shehuvim of mud in, or you put salt or snow, whatever, then it's not going to it's even if you did it with she'iva, it's not going to passel. Let's say you made a whole mikveh out of snow or ice or hail. You brought it in a kli. Mikveh kosher. You can make a mikveh out of snow, and it will be kosher. I mean, there's a machlokes rishonim about does the shelig does it have to be? We'll see in a second in the Ramah. But can you be toivel? Let's say there's a huge snowfall. Can you just be toivel in the snow? Would that work? And I think we don't. There is a sheet that's rishonim like that. A person can just jump into a snowdrift and you're fine. But
what about air pockets?
Well, we'll get to that in a second. Yeah, we're getting. But al-Kopanim, that's generally we don't paskin like that. It has to be actually into an actual bore. When you try to mikveh b'shelek, when you try to figure out the shear, you have to compact it. You have to take out the the air pockets. This is what I mentioned, that if you go ahead and you dump snow into a bore, and you measured it. It's amal, it's shalosh amal, whatever. So then you will be allowed to just jump into that snow. You jump in and toivel in that snow. Yesh machmirin litvo b'chol elu shalol, should be shalol litvo. I don't know what the curse is. Ad shenimuchay and nasumayim. Now many are machmir to not to go ahead and to be toivel in it until it melts and becomes water. V'tov lahachar chachila. Again, it should be machar chachila, meaning that let's say chachila, if a woman was toivel in sheleg, we're not going to tell her to go back to the mikveh and be toivel. Like she already went to her husband and went home. Then we're going to make her go back and be toivel in it. But al kopanim, that's how. If so, in places where there's no problem she'uvim by sheleg. So there are places where there are no rainfall, right, in Southwest U.S. and things like that. So making Moshe has a tshuva about making mikvaos out of snow. So there's discussions about it. Obviously, l'chachila, if you can get rain, Moshe writes that a rain mikvah is more l'chachila than a snow mikvah. Yeah, he's not saying it's possible. He said if there's a way to wait for rain, some places there's just not enough rain for years. They wait for years.
If it turns into water, then
Yeah, no. The tolach and chachila is not to be toivel as snow. You could no chachila. You could toivel when it melts. You could be toivel on it. Ramesha says it's still better to have a rain mikvah than it is to make a snow. But that's what he says. He says
Even if
it's,
it's melted.
he says it's still there's still a mila. There's still a mila if you have a choice. He said obviously if you don't have a choice. So then the issues with making a mikvah out of snow is one is there's no shu'uvim. However, it's a machokas rishonim, the Baal Ma'or and the Ravid. I think the Baal Ma'or is machmer. I mentioned this before, but Havaya al de Adam, that if a person picks up a big snowball, or and puts it in, then it's called Havaya al de Adam, and it's going to be puzzle. So so and the Chazon Ish paskins like that. I don't know if everyone passes like that, but it's definitely a sheet in the Rishonim discussed.
they would hold snow as forbidden.
Hmm?
So they would hold snow as forbidden.
No. Now the question is, how do you get the snow to the mikveh?
Right.
So some say, some say you take it with a shovel with a hole in it, so it's not a kli. It's not a kli. They take it. The way they do it is they take it. They have refrigerated trucks. Like if they would take it to the south, to like the southwest or something, and let's say in the U.S., they would have a refrigerated truck, and it would they fill it with snow and it would drive it to the mikveh. Now the issue is that also taking it with kalim is an issue. So I heard they say you take it with a bag with a hole in it, and there's an issue in the truck itself. It can't be the hole can't it can't be completely whole, whatever. Like it can't be in the truck. Maybe it's also clear. I don't know. I remember hearing that they would take the refrigerated truck to avoid this. They would and back it into a snowbank in the mountains in California. They would reverse it. I guess they would soften the snow up and back it up and then close it up. I don't know, things like that. But unfortunately, yes, there are places that needed to use snow, and it is a valid heter. Obviously they do it in lieu of waiting for rain. If they can get rain, right, then they'll like the fill a bore. I don't know exactly, but I think if I remember correctly, they'll if there's no other way, they'll do it until they get a rain mikvah, which is a bit more l'chachila than doing snow, because of all the other there's a lot of possible things that could go wrong. I think they asked what about buying bags of ice from an ice machine. Can you do that? Rasha's not so keen on it, but l'chara you could. B'di'evid, if there's no other way, and I don't know, whatever. We're not talking about the. Right. Well, we'll see Lamed Aleph in a second here. Let's see Lamed Aleph. Mikveh shov shehiglid tahor mishumayim sheuvim. Mikveh shov that froze. Then it's tahor mishumayim sheuvim nimucha kosher lahakvos. So let's say if you had a mikveh and it froze completely, then it melted, then it is a kosher mikveh. I never heard of anyone doing it. Had an idea of putting, in the wall, putting in the walls of a mikveh, refrigerate ice, Freon sticks or whatever to freeze the mikveh. It would take a long time to freeze a mikveh solid, to be honest. It's not just like let it sit in, maybe in the Russian cold. It would take a long time to freeze it solid. But once you're able to freeze it solid and then let it melt, you would have a mikveh. And I just don't. Yeah, it's gonna and also anyway with the snow, the minig is also we're gonna get to hamshacha that they don't put it into the mikveh itself. The minig is to put it outside the mikveh. Hamshacha is when you usually they always let is when you let mayim she'uvim run on the ground before it goes into the mikveh. So the idea of hamshacha, which is matar the mayim she'uvim. We'll get into the details later on. And that's all the mikvahs do that for all types of water. Chopanim for the snow, we're also machmir for that. They dump the snow in a big pile outside the mikvah, and then it has to melt and flow into the and then it flows into the mikveh because the Amshacha will take care of any possible shilas of Sheruvim. So Achapanim, right. So this, if you went ahead and froze the water in the mikveh, then that will l'chara take care of. Yes, that would give you a kosher mikveh. It's not considered. It's not considered water at that time. I don't know. I always wondered if you. There's an interesting shita. Ben Ish Chai brings a Chuvas Ben Ari. I don't remember who says that. We're going to get into the next sif about tit. That if you go ahead and you make the mikvah into mud, and it's shuvim, and you throw a bunch of dirt in, and you make it like a thin mud, then it's not shuvim anymore. It's matar the water, and then you can go ahead and you dilute it, and you have a kosher mikvah. It's interesting ideas. Again, these aren't people usually don't do these things, but Barayon, it's a very interesting idea.